Welcome to the Barrel Room Chronicles. I'm Carrie Moynihan, a certified bourbon steward, former bartender, and all-around whiskey aficionado. I travel the world to explore whiskey from every avenue. For the last 20 years, I've been helping others tell their stories through television, film, and other media. But now I'm taking my love for whiskey and my experience in the entertainment industry to uncover the fascinating stories of the water of life. So kick off your shoes, pour yourself a dram, and join me for this episode of Barrel Room Chronicles.
Fine wine has long been a cornerstone of wealth generation and preservation. The problem? Historically, it's been reserved for the ultra-wealthy. VinoVest is changing that. Wine has one-third the volatility of the stock market and has outperformed the global equities market over the past 30 years, with 10.6% annualized returns, proving that the returns can be just as robust as your favorite red. It is so easy to get started in diversifying your investment portfolio. VinoVest makes it easy to acquire new investments. Equipped with a team of world-class sommeliers who evaluate wine and determine which ones will gain value over time. You own the wines in your portfolio outright. You can buy, sell, and even drink them whenever you want. Go to http://zen.ai/Barrel Room Chronicles to receive 2 months of fee-free investing. Be sure to mention that Barrel Room Chronicles is helping you save on 2 months of management fees. It's time to start investing with VinoVest today.
It is 5 o'clock somewhere, and you've tuned in to episode 6 of BRC. For those of you watching this on our website, YouTube, or Spotify, you'll get a glimpse of the 291 Colorado Distillery when we speak to Michael Myers in Tales from the Still. And later in the show, Chef Louise Leonard will talk to us about fly fishing. Stay with us. Hey everybody, we are back for another edition of Barrel Room Chronicles. Today's guest is Michael Myers from 291 Colorado Whiskey. So Michael, we always start the show off talking about whiskey journeys. When you were a little boy, did you think ever in your wildest dreams that you'd be in Colorado making whiskey? And where did you grow up? And if you did not do whiskey all your life, what was your previous career?
Okay, so no, I did not think I would be doing whiskey at 56 years old. Making whiskey, drinking it probably, but not making it, and obviously not making it to sell. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, Alpharetta, Georgia. When I was really young, my mom and my parents got divorced. My mom moved to California, so I spent my summers in California with my mom, summers and Christmas time. But I pretty much grew up with my dad on kind of a gentleman farm. We raised Tennessee walking horses and some cows at a certain point. But yeah, just a small farm, couple of different ones throughout Georgia, and then we had a family farm in Tennessee, Flat Creek, Tennessee, which is in between Dickel and Jack.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, about 7 miles each direction. So yeah,
very nice.
And a previous career, yeah, I started this when I was 46, 10 years ago.
Okay.
I was a fashion and beauty photographer in New York.
Wow, that's quite a difference.
Yeah, quite a difference. So it's quite a story.
So how long were you doing that career, and why the sudden change from photography to whiskey?
So I was given a camera when I was 15, turning 16, and picked it up and started shooting everything and anything, high school basketball and football games and cows and all kinds of stuff. And came time to go to college and really was into photography. And so I wanted to be a photographer and went to Savannah College of Art and Design and graduated SCAD with a degree in photography. Went back to Atlanta, worked for a year there, felt like I would be at the top of my game in a couple of years and really wanted more out of my career. So was either New York or LA. My mom was in LA. I knew people in LA, so I went to LA and lived there for about 5 years, and then met my now ex-wife, but my future wife at that time, and she was in the fashion world and a designer she was working for wanted her to move back to New York, so we we up and moved to New York, and was really good for me because my work at the time was more traditional, classic, not really the California look. Um, and so started working for GQ, Esquire, Forbes,
All the good
um,
ones.
Mademoiselle during that time. Yeah. And have two sons that were born on the Isle of Manhattan, so in New York City. Um, and then 2001 came around, September, and September 11th, we lived 3 blocks from World Trade Center, and I was on Greenwich and Duane when the first plane hit. So I saw it all. Yeah. So with my youngest on my shoulders, and my wife, ex-wife, was from Colorado, so we went back to Colorado, and I commuted from Colorado Springs to New York almost weekly, trying to save my photography career and also be with my family. So did that for a long time, and then was looking for something else to do that was creative that I could do in Colorado. That I don't know, just creative. And I was shooting Vanity Fair in August 2010, a portrait at the Met, and I was flying back and read an article about the guy that created Hendrick's Gin and Sailor Jerry, and thought I could brand a whiskey. And then someone said, "Why don't you try and make it?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm from Georgia. They make it in the woods. How hard could it be?"
Right.
I had never brewed beer or distilled, and started looking for a still. Um, Came to Vendome, and Vendome, the still was $50,000 for more or less a hobby still. I didn't realize that at the time, but really expensive. And so I felt that I could build my own still, design and build my own still.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of, I try to think back to that time a lot and go, what was I really thinking? Like, how did I, and I just, being an artist and all like that, growing up on a farm, I've built a lot of stuff. So I'm like, it can't be that hard. It's a very simple machine, right?
Right.
And so I just drew it out. I had, I don't know, 11 quarters of mechanical drafting in high school, so I knew how to draw mechanically, which was helpful. And drew it up. Had it. I actually needed copper, and I had these photogravure plates. So a flat copper plate that you chemically etch an image in. You put ink on it, put a piece of paper with it, run it through a press, and you get an inked photograph.
Right.
So I took these plates that are very thin and had them water jet cut to the pattern that I had made, and then rolled them through a metal roller to curve them, and then took them to this guy that I found in Colorado Springs that could TIG weld copper. And that's an art in itself. And he was a phenomenal welder, and took him forever to do it or get started on the project. But once he did, it was just amazing. And I still have that still today. And the seams, his TIG weld seams are just so beautiful, art in themselves. And yeah, so I have a 45-gallon still that's really beautiful, has etchings all over it of Jackson Hole, Carefree, Arizona, Savannah, all different places that meant different things to me throughout my life. They're photographs that I took in those places. In the column, the tall part of the still, um, I took and reversed the image on the inside to hopefully add a little more surface area and make the whiskey better, or at least have a good story. So I have a picture looking down, and you can see the Chrysler building
Oh,
in
wow.
this inside of the column.
And you still use it today?
Yes. So I started out with my process is distilled 3 times pot stills. Beer still or stripping still is the first run. Second run is the finish with a thump keg. So my 45-gallon still, I had a manifold built for a keg or a barrel, a small 5-gallon barrel, 10-gallon barrel, that turned it into a thump keg. Um, it's not a doubler because it's not heated. It's actually heated from the steam coming into it, the
Right.
distillate. So when I built a 300-gallon still that's identical to my 45-gallon, except for just bigger, I decided to use my original still as the thump keg. And so we're doing 600 gallons a week here.
Wow.
And those 600 gallons goes across that original still every week. So it's pretty cool. I started in 600 or 300 square feet, making 60 gallons a month. So to go from 60 gallons a month to 600 gallons a week
Yeah,
is
that's a big
pretty,
difference.
yeah, pretty amazing. And especially in 10 years. So in that 300 square foot space, I was there for 2.5 years. And just making whiskey.
That's very cool. So when you started off, did you have like a nest egg that you said, okay, this will get me through the first 3 years that you have to, leave it in a barrel, or did you have to get investors, or how did the beginning start?
The beginning started, actually, I had a advertising job, I guess, a design job, that someone came to me and wanted full on, um, full brand website, materials, television commercials, all kinds of stuff. And so um, I got paid pretty well for that. So I took that money, and I didn't have a nest egg. I really bootstrapped this completely, and really didn't have a sense of how to start a business. So I just started, and so I took that money. I built the still. I built the interior of that 300 square foot space. Not a lot of money. And I also renovated my '84 Dodge truck that says 291 Colorado whiskey on the doors, and it's a black truck. It's it's got about 500,000 miles since I renovated it, so it's a little rough at the moment. Um, I've got a donor truck. I'm getting ready to redo it, hopefully, but I keep putting whiskey in a barrel instead of putting money in a truck. Um, but yeah, I started with small barrels, 10-gallon barrels in that space because a 53-gallon barrel wouldn't even fit through the door.
Right.
And I just started making whiskey and putting it in a barrel. And um, 2012, I guess I started maybe with a 5-gallon barrel, and it aged for about 6 to 8 months, and a couple of barrels. And I sent some of the whiskey off to the Whiskey Bible, and received 94 points for barrel number 2 of my rye whiskey.
Great.
Um, yeah, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Um, Being that I'd never brewed beer or distilled when I started this, and my bourbon recipe today is my very first recipe, and my rye recipe today is my very second recipe. So not a lot of experimental stuff going on at the start of it. The whiskey came off the still tasting really good, and it didn't really change anything.
That's awesome. So which did you make first, the bourbon or the rye?
I made the bourbon. So Mike Bristol, a friend of mine, Bristol Brewing Company here in Colorado Springs, had a 50-pound bag of corn, um, flake corn or something like that. And he's like, "You're welcome to it. I'm never going to use it." And I said, "Great." So I went to the homebrew shop, got enough rye malt, rye malt to make an 80-20, so 80% corn, 20% malt rye. My bourbon recipe today is 80% corn, 19% malt rye, 1% malt barley. I took 1% away and changed it out early on within the month of making whiskey. But I ran a finish run September 11th, 2011, and that was the bourbon, and it came off still, and it was really good. So I didn't change that recipe. And then the rye, I loosely based around the Thomas Handy recipe.
Okay.
It's a high corn recipe, and so it's 61% malt rye, 39% corn, um, and that recipe has never changed. Um, so yeah, I say a lot of lightning strikes. I mean, I got incredibly lucky. Um, a lot of hard work, but I know a lot of people in this industry have put a lot of hard work in and do the same. And, things go different ways.
So you've sent me 4 samples. We have the small batch bourbon, 100 proof, barrel proof bourbon. It's kind of rubbed off, but it looks like 128.4 proof.
That's probably about right.
And then I've got a small batch rye, 101.7 proof, and a Colorado whiskey, 129.2, it looks like, proof. So tell me about these variations. Like, what's...
When I started this, I wanted to make a Western whiskey, right? And for me, I love rye. And I think rye is big, bold, and beautiful, rugged, refined, rebellious. And so the bourbon just got made because of having that corn immediately and wanting to mash in on a weekend. And so I went for the rye, and that is the 291 Colorado whiskey at barrel proof that you have.
That is a rye.
It is a rye. So when I started, both my rye said 291 Colorado whiskey. I didn't think I wanted to name it a rye, and then people were like, "We like to know it's a rye." So the bottle proof at 101.7 got rye on the label, but I want the 291 Colorado whiskey is my whiskey, and I don't want rye. I mean, there's a little rye on the label, rye mash bill or something like that. But other than that, I want it to be Colorado whiskey. So that's why it's labeled that way. Makes a little bit of confusion for people, but if you taste it, you'll know what it is.
Right.
And then the bourbon is barrel proof and bottle proof.
Okay.
And it says bourbon on it.
So which, we're going to taste these 4. Which one should I start with today? Which one do you want to talk about first? Or which tasting way do you think?
I'd start with the bourbon.
The barrel proof or the small batch?
I'd start with the small batch, the 100 proof. Okay. Just so you're not blowing out your palate.
Right. Okay.
I think I poured a little much for me. I'm going to pour a little on this barrel. There we go. Drinking in the middle of the day.
So this is the small batch that I have here.
Nice. That's what I got.
Oh, that's a beautiful bottle.
Thank you.
Oh, that smells lovely.
So like I said, 80% corn, 19% malt rye, 1% malt barley.
Ooh. It's like light and sweet with a big bite.
All my whiskeys are finished on aspen staves. So I take toasted pieces of aspen wood and put them either in the barrel for the barrel proof single barrel or in the small batch when we batch them together. And they sit there for about 3 weeks. For me, it adds a little more smoke, a little more spice, and a little bit of the caramel notes go to more maple.
Nice. That's lovely. I'm going to now to the barrel proof. Is that what we're going to next?
Sure.
Mine is 128.4. I'm assuming they're all different depending on the barrel.
They are. They usually sit around 128, 130. But yeah.
Now, is this the same
same mash bill as the bourbon? These 2 whiskeys we make every other day.
That's got a kick.
Yeah, it's a big whiskey.
That would be good. Well, so many things it would be good with, but I'll let Chef Louise tell us what that'd be good with. But ooh, it's got a lot of flavor. A big, bold, hot. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to the ryes.
So I do the 101.7, which is kind of a funny story because the first time I proofed whiskey down, you can't back up. And I literally did not know what I was doing. And so I was trying to hit 100, and I think I got to 101.6. And I'm like, I think I'm good. I'm going to just sit right there. And then the next batch, I proofed it down and hit 101.7, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stay there. And it's just as hard to hit 100 or a 101.7. I now know that after proofing many batches down, many barrels. But it was a
That's
funny
lovely.
thing. So
That's lovely. It doesn't even taste like 101.
no,
it doesn't. It's not.
So this one is 60%, 61% malt rye, 39% corn.
That's delicious.
Thank you.
It's very smooth for that hot of a proof. All right, now the Colorado whiskey, 129.2. That's a big boy. Let's see.
It is.
And this one is same mash bill?
Same mash bill.
Okay.
I like high proof whiskey. You can always add water to it if you want it a little softer.
No, that's great. The flavor is a little bit more bold than the 101. And I agree. I like to have it hot. That way you can always add water or ice or whatever.
And truly, these whiskeys, if you take one drop from an eyedropper, one drop, and drip it in there and let it sit for a moment, it just opens up and softens and gets incredibly beautiful.
I'm going to try that right now.
A lot of people don't realize that whiskey's a lot like wine. When you pop that cork and it opens up and changes.
Oh yeah, the smell already changed the nose.
Right?
Oh yeah. That's that blossoms it. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just a slight bit lighter, but still very bold. It's delicious.
Thank you.
So, do you do anything else besides whiskeys? It's all whiskey at your place.
It's all whiskey. I do have we call it our redheaded stepchild. It's a liqueur. It's whiskey based, but literally, I'd been making whiskey a month or so. Went to my second tasting in Breckenridge, and you had to come up with a cocktail for the tasting. So I've always done whiskeritas, and so I was going to have a whiskerita. And the funny thing about that is now, I own that trademark. So there are only 5 cocktails in the world that have been trademarked, and it's the hand grenade, Sazerac, dark and stormy, painkiller, and now the whiskerita.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
How long did that process take to get the trademark?
Not too long. It took a while. Like this was 10 years ago. A month in, I went to make whiskeritas at this the poker run the night before the grand tasting. Did that. The morning I woke up, it had snowed. I'm like, I can't do whiskeritas, so I came up with another cocktail. But I had that name then and didn't have the money to trademark it. It took a few years, and finally this year we trademarked it. So, it's a process. You just you have to file paperwork and then wait, and goes through the process, and then they let you know, or they want you to add more, backup for it and stuff like that. So, but it snowed, and I'm like, I've got to figure something out. So I went for a drive and was like, I've got citrus, I've got my fresh whiskey. What would go with that is a little bit of clove. It was October, season. And so I went to the grocery store, got some clove powder, went to the liquor store, got some Everclear, went back to my room, broke open the Mr. Coffee, made a clove tea, made a clove liqueur, with sugar. And then I started mixing them together and tasting them. And I was like, nah. And I mixed them the three parts together and tasted it. It was like, wow, you can drink that on a snowy deck. If you drink too much, you're going to hit the deck. That is the name of the liqueur. It's the Deck, DECC, and that's because DECK was not available on .com, and so I named it that. And it's a really nice liqueur. It's kind of a little like triple sec with a little twist to it. It's great. We take an ounce of whiskey and an ounce of that, put it over ice, and it's a quick old fashioned.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So but like I said, it gets no love in the distillery. It's really hard to make. It's sticky whenever we make it. So we stick to whiskey. We really like making whiskey.
Awesome. So, what states and or countries are your four main products that we just tasted available in?
So we're in 18 states. Colorado, I can't name them all, but Colorado, California, New York, Kentucky, Texas, um, Las Vegas, so Nevada, Oregon, Wyoming, New Jersey, Miami, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, DC, and Wisconsin, I think,
Okay,
Illinois. So,
great.
and then Canada, a little in the UK, and a little in Germany. But the
Oh, wow.
tariffs really hurt that
Oh,
for
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So, but we're back. We're back to normal there, and trying to get more. Working on Japan at the moment.
Oh,
So,
good. Japan's great whiskey market. Yeah.
yeah, excited about that market.
Yeah. Awesome. So, what's your 10-year plan with the distillery?
So I'm 10 years in. I started in that 300 square foot space. We are now in 12,000 that I'm sitting in. We have 2 stripping stills behind us, and then in the H3 room, the 300-gallon finish still. We have 7 fermentation tanks over here on the left, or my left. We have 14,000 feet on the other side of this wall that we're going to take over in the next 6 months, mainly for storage, barrel storage and stuff, and just keep growing the next 10 years. I have now a team of 30 people. Yeah, it's amazing, and we're just keep growing, keep making whiskey, trying to get it in more states and also just more people to taste it. I really love the reaction when people taste my whiskey.
Yeah, it's good
stood,
stuff.
thank you. I've stood behind many tasting tables pouring whiskey, and the reactions are always amazing. And I just hope that many more people over the next 10 years gets to drink it and call it their whiskey. If you're drinking 291, we call you family. So
Let's talk about the name 291. Is that some significance in Colorado, or what is that for?
its significance in my life. 291 was the very first photo gallery ever in the world.
Okay.
Gallery 291 Fifth Avenue. Alfred Stieglitz started it in 1907.
Nice.
I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I moved in without knowing of the gallery into dorm room 291.
Oh, wow.
And then I learned of the gallery, and I'm like, meant to be a photographer. I have the key to this day in my desk that's stamped 291 on it. And that number was around me a lot as a photographer. And then when I started this, building the still out of photogravure plates, and the process of distillation reminds me of the darkroom. So 291, and it's been a great name for a whiskey. So
It is great. It's like even if they forget the name, they know it's the one with the numbers.
yeah,
That's
so
awesome. So, do you have anything new coming out soon that we should tell our listeners to watch out for?
so we always have allocated whiskey, experimental. Our 291E label is our experimental batch, and so every time we have something that's interesting that we feel is good enough to put in a bottle, we release it as an E. Last year we did not release any E's. The year before we released 2. This year we'll probably release. We already have 1 released right now, and we'll at least release another, if not 2, this year.
Oh, cool.
And then I just did this summer. I had never heard of anybody doing a 4-grain wheated rye whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's a lot of grain.
yeah, so I did one. The White Dog came off still amazing. I mean, incredible. So I'm excited for that, but that's a couple of years away. And that'll most likely come out of it as an E first before we make a label out of it. And then I did my bourbon, my 80%. I made it a wheated bourbon, so it's 80% corn, 19% malt wheat, and then 1% malt rye. That the White Dog came off the still really, really pretty, and so I'm excited about that.
Very cool. So do you do a lot of the hands-on work yourself, or did you hire some experts to do that for you?
So I hired, so at my first tasting, and literally a week after making whiskey, I was in Rack House Pub in Stranahan's, and they were having Distillers Guild tasting, and so I brought my white whiskey, and a bunch of people came around, and about 5 guys from Stranahan's came up, and Rob Dietrich, distiller, now he's for Blacken,
Yeah.
was in that group and tasted it, and they were like, "This is the best White Dog we've ever had," and it was.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah, a great compliment. And in that group was Eric Jett, who started tasting it. Was like, "Oh my God, I taste this. This is amazing." Blah blah. And I left there and was like, "Okay, he's going to be my first hire." It took me 3.5 years to hire him.
Oh wow.
I did not steal him from Stranahan's. He was in a hiatus, and I had time and money that I could hire him, and so I brought him on freelance first, and then he's distilled all my whiskey since, and it is an incredible distiller. And we still talk. We, almost all the ideas are my ideas. But no, physically, I'm not. I mean, I can, but no, I have a team that I've got to do podcast. I've got to run a company. I've got to raise money, different things like that. So my job has changed, and actually we were in the team launch meeting Monday of this week for 2022, whole company meeting, and Eric was like talking about it. He's like, now I'm not doing so much hands-on because I have Micah and Zach under me, and they're doing all the work with people under them, and it's so different. My job's so different. I'm like, yeah, welcome to the club.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, he's an amazing person. I have an amazing team. It's been incredible to build that team and find people that most, if not all, the people that work for me came to work for me because they tasted the whiskey.
That's awesome.
They're like, I gotta go find out what this is about. Right. So it is awesome.
That is very cool. So. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate getting to see some of your building there, first of all, and then getting to hear your whiskey journey and learn about these 4 wonderful expressions was just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's been a great day being with you and sharing my story and drinking a little bit of whiskey. So thank you so much.
World of Wheezy is up next. Stay with us.
If you like what you've seen on BRC, you'll love what's coming soon in the Barrel Room Parlor. As a member, you'll have exclusive access to various spin-off series, including The Cutting Room Floor and the Telly Award-winning series Kindred Spirits. To create your membership, visit www.barrelroomchronicles.com and click on Become a Member. Once you have chosen your membership level, you'll be able to enjoy all the extra content it has to offer. You'll even be able to participate with the show by commenting on videos and other posts. Don't wait. Sign up today for exclusive content in the Barrel Room Parlor.
Hey, Louise, nice to have you this week. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you doing, Carrie?
Good. I talked to Michael Myers earlier from 291 Colorado Whiskey Distillery, and he sent over a couple of samples. And I know how you and I are both rye fans when it comes to American whiskey. So I sent over the 291 Colorado whiskey, which it doesn't say it's a rye, but I know that it's a rye because Michael told me. Anyway, so I sent that over and wanted to see what you thought of it today.
Oh, well, it immediately took me to I don't know, I should be camping and hiking somewhere in beautiful Colorado and have a nip of this at the end of the day. And one of the things that I've really been meaning to do is I have a very good friend that lives near Colorado Springs, and he's always talking about fly fishing. And that's something I've never done. My husband has gone fly fishing and he's a good fisherman. And I do know that there's loads of rainbow trout. I believe there's bluegill and perch and other fish in the rivers around there. And I don't know, to me, I was thinking, well, my God, if I was at the end of a day of fishing and hiking, and you start the fire, open wood, and you put some fresh caught rainbow trout. One thing I like to do when I'm grilling is I like to take citrus, either lemon or lime. You can use orange. Really, you could use whatever citrus you want. And I put that directly on the grill as well. It sort of caramelizes a lot of the sugars in the fruit. And then you can use that to make a vinaigrette to go over the fish.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I think that combined with this whiskey would be chef's kiss, would be delicious. Nice.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that with the flavors that come out of this. I can totally see the nature part for sure, and the camping for sure. And now that you say the rainbow trout, I can totally see that too. So that sounds great.
Well, yeah. And I just think that rye whiskeys just pair so beautifully in general with fish. I don't know if it's because I associate having rye with salmon a lot. But I mean, honestly, I like all fish. So to me, the earthiness of the rye paired with like the freshness of something like a rainbow trout that's very mild in flavor, I think would be great.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week on the show and giving us your ideas for the 291 Colorado whiskey, the rye flavor and the fish. That sounds great. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you later.
For show notes on today's episode, please visit www.barrelroomchronicles.com. If you like what you heard, please rate and subscribe to the podcast. If you really liked it and want to show your support, buy us a whiskey through our Ko-fi site. If you work in the whiskey industry or run a whiskey bar or club and you'd like to be featured on Barrel Room Chronicles, register to be a guest through our website. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, Solanjava.
Barrel Room Chronicles is a production of First Reel Entertainment and is distributed by Anchor FM and is available on Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.